Good afternoon, morning, or evening, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. I'm Sebastian from EXIN, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about Kanban. I'm really excited to get started. But first, let me introduce you guys to our speaker today. I have with us Felipe Oliveira, and Felipe has a long-time relationship with EXIN, actually. It goes back about 10 years. He is the founder of the consultancy Mindset Agile, and he is an Agile coach and coordinator. He has over 10 years of experience in technology, working as a Scrum Master, Project Manager, and Process Manager, in addition to providing those trainings around the topic of agility. But most recently, he has actually collaborated with us for as a subject matter expert for the EXIN Kanban program. So we're really glad to have you here, Felipe. Welcome to the webinar. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It's quite an honor to present you guys this kind of subject, and not just related to Kanban, but with EXIN. So
yeah,
as you said, I've been following you guys for the past 10 years, so it's kind of a moment.
Yeah, that's really good to hear.
My career.
Yeah. So before we start, I'll just go through some house rules for people. If you have any questions, please type them into the questions box you'll see on the screen. If it pops into your head, just type it in and we'll cover as many as we can at the end of the session. If you have any technical issues with GoToWebinar, my best advice is the classic turn it off and on again. However, there is a good FAQ section on the GoTo website in case of that. Please keep yourself muted at all times just to ensure things run smoothly. And yes, I think that's it. So, Philippe, I'm going to hand it over to you and switch my camera off.
Okay.
Make you the presenter. There we go. There we are. So you should now have screen sharing abilities.
No, I'm in God mode now.
You are.
Let me just check if I'm showing the right screen.
I see your Chrome at the moment.
Yes. Let me just use the right screen here.
Yeah, no worries.
Oh, bugger. Just a quick second, you guys.
Yep, no problem.
Okay, just found it. I was having a little bit of problem to show it, but now it's okay.
Yeah, we're still seeing your Chrome, just so you know.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, perfect.
Now you can see my presentation, right?
Yes, I can see the slides now. Yeah.
Okay then.
Oh, it's just gone. Yep. Okay.
You can see my other slide now.
Yep. All good.
Okay. Wow. It's rocket science, you guys. So bear with me. So everybody, welcome. For me, I'm now, it's 11 a.m. in Brazil, but some of you might not be in the same time zone, but that's okay. So good morning for everyone that it's having now. It's in the morning. For everyone it's afternoon, good afternoon, or if someone, I don't know, it's night, so good evening. Welcome to this webinar, to this incredible webinar, and I hope that you guys like it. So I'm a little bit nervous because it's one of my first time. It's my first time with EXIN, so presenting something like that. So be patient. Everything is going to be fine. So today we're going to talk about flow of work and how can we define flow of work in the organization. Not just talking about metrics, but about processes and a little bit about Kanban itself. So I think Sebastian covered all the basics. I'm Felipe Oliveira. I own a company called Mindset Ágil. It's in Brazil. For English, it's kind of Agile Mindset. I'm the owner and the main consultant. I'm also a partner in partnership with Kanbanize, which is a Kanban platform that delivers project management, portfolio management around the world. I'm also in partnership with EXIN as a subject matter expert for the Kanban certification. I help EXIN to build the exam and other few things. I'm also proud to be a book writer. I wrote a few chapters of these books that you are seeing right here. One is about leadership, the other one about business agility, another about collaboration, and the other about facilitation. So, and today we're going to talk about a few topics, nothing too fancy, but we're going to be quite straightforward. How we can define flow, how we can deal with flow, which metrics can we use to facilitate this process, and a few examples, so we can work a little bit in a more pragmatic way. Okay. So if anyone here have any questions, you can or save them or just put it in the chat, and and Sebastian will read it to me later. Okay. Okay then. First of all, the definition of flow, when we talk about flow in a work environment, and especially in a digital work environment, we are talking about how work can go from upstream to downstream, how work can start in one day and be closed, be delivered to the customers as fast as possible, and with maximum quality and with the minimum cost. We are trying to make work go from point A to point B with minimum cost and maximum quality. And when we're talking about managing flow, we are trying to make everything around the workflow work towards that, to make everything that we're trying to work here go in the fastest way. So anything we're trying to accomplish with our customers should go to the customer as fast as possible. Okay, and all the work we do here is analyze, reprioritize, reorder, discard, limit work, so we can make everything go as smoothly as possible. So everything we are doing is just delivering stuff to our customer the better way we can. So a few examples when we talk about flow, and I use these kind of examples with my customers and my students, is to talk about stuff like traffic and stuff like when you're going to a drugstore or when you're going to a supermarket, or even in a farm you can have flow, but this isn't actually flow, right? We are talking about a few things that are related to the flow of work, not exactly everything that is part of a flow. So in a daily basis, when we are working with items, when we're working with features in a digital environment or a non-digital environment with marketing teams and or tax teams, we are always dealing with stuff that are present here in this image, in these images. So we are talking about work that is in progress. We're talking about input of information and input of work. We're talking about output. We're talking about queues. We're talking about bottlenecks. So everything about our everyday life talks about flow. Okay. So everything we are trying to do here, while Kanban consultants, while agile coaches, while agile masters, or any kind of role you have in your company, is trying to make everything that you are seeing here smoother. So every day, even though we try that, right? We try to make workflow in your system, we actually find stuff like this. So what you guys see here, just think about this for a second. What you guys are seeing here, a lot of you guys are going to say overload of work, a mess, right? You also can see this in your environment, in your workstation, in your work environment. You can see lots and lots of people and lots and lots of work items waiting and waiting and waiting for completion. And you also can see this in your work environment every day. Frustration, sadness, burnout. Burnout is actually it's a subject we already knew it existed, but I think it has become a little bit more known for the public. So in our everyday life, we are facing stuff like that. Cues and flow are part of our lives, and as a consequence, we have a few things like waste. We have a few things like frustration. We have a few things like cost of delay, increase of cost of delay. So, okay, Felipe, you told me that flow is part of our lives. You have told me that we can define flow as all the activities and processes and practices that we use to make workflow, to make flow of work, to make the work come from the start to finish, as fast as possible, as effective as possible, as with less cost. But how can we deal with that? How we can make Kanban or how can we make the workflow from point A to point B? And since we have as much waste as anyone can have. So how can Kanban and flow practices deal with the flow of work? Well, there are a few things. Kanban has 6 principles and Kanban has 6 practices that can help you guys to um, make waste a little bit smaller and make use a little bit smaller. I'm not going to talk about the principles here. It's kind of a big subject, but we can talk a little bit about the 6 practices that Kanban has to deliver a better flow for your company. So first of all, in your daily life, you can talk about visualization all day long. When you are in the traffic, when you are talking to your wife, when you are learning something in a lecture, in a classroom, or even in a webinar, we are talking about visualization. How can we can make all the work that you're trying to perform more visual, and this can help you providing more transparency. This can help you providing the necessary information for you to manage all the work. Okay. A few of the people that are going to that are watching this or are going to watch this, possibly have worked with some kind of card wall, right? A Kanban board or stuff like that. The more visual a Kanban board is, the better it becomes. So different colors, different formats, or different kind of objects that can show you what's the item priority or the impact or how difficult it is. So visualization can help you to provide that kind of transparency that can tell you if you need to work a little bit better or closer or even with more attention in any kind of work item. Another practice that Kanban has is manage flow. It's everything that we're talking about here. So how can we complete the work as smoothly as possible and with more predictability and with more flow, actually? So how can we remove impediments and be more predictable with blockages and dependencies? Or how can we establish a few practices and a few policies to influence people to not just visualize the dependencies, but to work on it beforehand? Okay. So how can we make better decisions? How can we make better decisions in our work environment with other teams and in our team itself? Another practice is limit work in progress, and this is kind of a paradox, right? For some people believe that limiting work in progress is actually something not so productive. But mathematically, if you guys have studied or start studying Little's law, you can see that work in progress can influence directly in how long a work item can be delivered, and how much work you can deliver in a certain period. So limiting work in progress is part of the set of practices that probably most of us should use, because using limitation, you're starting to limit the work that is in progress. You can actually see how much of your bottleneck is being shown to you, and how much of queues you have or how much waste you have. So if you try to limit a little bit what you're working on right now, you might be able to see how big is your bottleneck and how big is your waste. Okay. Another practice is make policies explicit. So everything in our lives can carry a policy. When you are catching a plane, for example, or catching a bus, you can see a lot of policies. You can enter the bus if you don't pay it, or you can enter your airplane if you don't follow a few set of rules. And when you're sitting if you're on the airplane, if you're in the airplane and the plane is taking off, you can get up, you can remove your seatbelt, you can do a lot of things. So these are all policies that we live with. Okay. If you are walking around with your wife or your husband, you can look to other people and you should grab their hand and you should hug them and stuff like that. When you are going to the movies, you have your ID. You have to show your ID because you're a student, you're an elder or something like that. These are all policies that for you are explicit. You can smoke in closed environment. At least in Brazil, you can't smoke in a closed environment. So these are all policies. And what about your work environment? What kind of policies do you have? And you are not making them explicit. So how can you not just have better policies, but make the current policies more explicit so you can provide not just transparency, but increase the flow of work? How can you tell your team, well, what do we need to finish this work? What are the policies? What are the main activities that can show us how long does it take to finish this work? So these are all about policies. Another thing is implementation of feedback loops. And I think you all know this, but feedback is critical for everything in our lives. Okay. When we actually have feedback loops on mostly every day, we are trying to obtain information when we are cooking, when we are talking to people, it's always about feedback loops. Okay. And when you are, for example, making dinner and you need to check what you are cooking, you are actually searching for feedback. Um, so when we talk about a working environment, how long does it take for you to get a feedback from your team, from your customers, from the work? Uh, um, what is your how long does it take for you to understand how is your flow of work? Are you measuring it? You are measuring every day, every week, every month. So it's probably wise for you guys that are working with team to understand when are you checking this kind of information? Are you checking on a daily basis, weekly, monthly? Are you measuring it all? There's a big question. Are you measuring your flow? Is it, or is just we're just going with the with the stream? Okay. And the sixth practice is improve collaboratively and evolve experimentally. So to summarize, we need to understand how we can improve our processes, but in a more collaborative way. But always think about improvement with kind of in an experimental mindset. So every solution is not a solution actually, it's a countermeasure. It's something that you use because today is going to be you're going to have a better solution, and you're going to have a better solution the next day and the next day and the next day. So you should treat every improvement that you're trying to perform in a more experimental way. Okay. Mainly because change is about experimentation. Okay, if you don't create change in a complex environment and with a more experimental approach, you might find resistance. You might find people that are actually not fond of the change. You might find people that are going to be actively against the change. So you might want to have a more lean, a more smoother approach. So flow is everywhere and work in progress is everywhere. This is just a quick comment here, okay? A lot of people say that working limitation on work in progress limits are counterproductive. That doesn't work. But you have work in progress limits everywhere. When you go to your theme park or a roller coaster, you have work in progress limits, okay? If you didn't have, people will just fly out of the cart, okay? So we talk about capacity and limit and work in progress limits every day. So think about that before trying to deny yours or even think that limits don't exist. So managing flow is about delivering more with less. Managing flow is about focusing on the work, not on the people. And how can we do that, right? How can we actually know if we are providing a more Kanbanistic perspective, right? How can we make people aware of our, let's say, the health of our flow? We start to measure. We start to use a few metrics so we can provide them the necessary information. But before measuring, everybody talks about, especially agile teams, when you talk about metrics and Kanban metrics and flow metrics, there's always a discussion about estimation. So what I'm talking about here is using story points or ideal hours or something like that. Okay, and the reasons that we are conflicting this kind of information, why people discuss it is a delicate discussion, is because first of all, estimations in software development are two subjective things, and they depend on human mind. So we are trying to use experience to provide dates or deadlines. Also, when you have complexity, when as complexity increases, you have estimations with less tangibility and less predictability. And also, star points might help you guys at the beginning, in the beginning, but when you talk about flow, historical data might be more helpful. So, but it's not about a fight, okay? It's not about no estimates and story points. It's not about confrontation, okay? I'm not talking this kind of stuff. I'm not telling you to first day tomorrow remove story points and start to work with no estimates, or start the next day with lead time and throughput and ignore everything you have right now. I'm just trying to improve what you guys have now. Okay, I'm telling you, don't replace what you have now, just start to use a little bit more of metrics and stuff like that. Okay, so how do we measure flow? What kind of metrics do we use to measure flow? What kind of information we need to have to measure these things so we can have more flow, we can make work flow in your environment? So a few things. Flow efficiency is a very useful metric, so you can understand how long are your items waiting. Okay, so you have, I don't know, 2-3 items in your workflow right now in progress. How long are they waiting? Flow efficiency is mainly calculated by the queue time divided by lead time or by cycle time. So how long is an item waiting in your workflow? Most companies make it, I don't know, something like a 30% or 40% flow efficiency. In other words, 60% of the time the item is waiting for something to happen, for someone to develop it, or for someone to test the item or to deploy that item. So flow efficiency is a very good metric, so you can understand how long do items wait in your environment. Another kind of metric which is extremely useful, because you can kind of break down the time. You can get your lead time or your cycle time, and you can just break it down to understand how long an item is waiting or is being worked on in each step of the way. So dividing it will be quite useful to understand, oh, my item here is waiting a little bit longer in the deploy phase, or in the testing phase, or in development phase, or code review, or anything like that. So you kind of break down your lead time in small parts to understand that. This is not exactly a metric. This is more it's a chart, which is the cumulative flow diagram. You can understand how your flow is going. So what is your work in progress right now? What is your throughput? What is your lead time? And how your bottlenecks are being identified. So in these two images, for example, you can identify bottlenecks easily. Okay, you can see how long an item is waiting in a certain column or in a certain phase. So it becomes a more visual process, and you can understand what is your flow health. It's not a metric, but it's definitely useful for you anyone that's watching here to use. Well, these are all about efficiency. What about predictability? Now, how do you measure the predictability of your flow? You can use throughput and a few variations of throughput. For example, you can use throughput, which is mainly how many items you are closing in a period. I don't know. So how many items you are closing per week or per day or per month. when you start to measure this, you can have a few statistical practices like mean or percentiles. You can use this, or probability, to understand how many items you are going to close in the next week or the week after that. So in the first image, for example, is a real image from a customer. They have a 7 items per week throughput, and with a variation of 15 to 20%. So I can tell you guys with certainty that next week they are going to deliver at least 7 items. Okay, and that can vary in 20%. So they might deliver 5, they might deliver 9. This week, for example, they have delivered 10 already. So if anyone comes, oh, we have 10 items here for your team to deliver. Okay, I can deliver 7 of them in the next week and another 3 in the week after. Okay, so this is predictability. Another information that is quite useful is lead time or cycle time. There are a few definitions for cycle time. I'm using here this definition that is the point where you started the work and you finished the work. Any time between that is cycle time. And lead time is from commitment point and from finish, from commitment point to finish. Okay. I'm using these two definitions. And cycle time can deliver for you not just when you can deliver. So if someone comes with an item and they ask, well, okay, I have a work item here for you, when can this be delivered? And they are going to, they will use cycle time for you. Okay, they'll tell you, oh, we can deliver this in 7 days or 10 days or 15 days with 85% confidence. And or when can you start? For example, we are approaching to Black Friday. So I have a feature here. It must be delivered until, I don't know, November 1st. So when can we start? Well, it depends on the cycle time. If we have a 15-day cycle time, we can start the item, I don't know, October 15th or October 16th. So this is predictability. You can tell people when to start or and when to finish. Okay. And there are a lot of things that we can use about predictability here. We can use percentage of confidence with throughput. We can divide throughput by type to understand which items are taking longer or how many items, how many types of items you are delivering. So I have the item, I don't know, improvement, and the other that is a technical task, and the other that is a bug, a defect, right? So how many items am I delivering for divided by type? Or what is the variation of that throughput? How can we use the coefficient of variation? How many items are getting into my workflow? How many items are getting out? So it's input versus output. What is the frequency of my delivery? How many? What is the timestamp between one delivery and the other? And how can we understand the tendency of that? Lead time, there's a lot of variation, a lot of things that we can measure with lead time. Break down this metric: queue time, cycle time or lead time breakdown, flow efficiency, confidence, tendency. And work in progress is also something that we can measure, not just the limits itself, but how are we using this limit? Are we breaching it every day? It's something that we can follow in extremely every day of our lives. What is the aging of our work in progress? So every item in my that is in progress right now, what is the age of them? How long are they taking in each phase, and what is our expectation for them to be closed? And can we use a constant work in progress? Limit all the environment, not just the downstream, not just the development part, not just the team part, right? But the entire flow, the entire system, from marketing to customer support. How is our distribution? How consistent are we going with the work in progress limit? Okay. So how can we help teams to use stuff like that? Okay, I've been working with metrics and everything, but how can we help teams to work with metrics and work with flow? Well, first of all, consider Kaizen culture. A Kaizen culture is a culture that we can teach people, but takes time. Okay, every person in the company thinks about process improvement and continuous improvement. So allow your teams to make the change, allow your teams to understand the impact of the change and make them feel safe while doing it. People won't tell you what's wrong if they fear punishment. So there's no Kaizen culture without psychological safety. Provide the psychological safety so they can find ways to improve your processes right now. Another thing that is quite useful is to produce the enough stress to change. So everything you are trying to do now to change your environment is kind of it's a little bit of stress. Cause that stress. Okay, that's something that Kanban maturity model can teach you guys. So Kanban can drive you to change through intentional stress. So cause a little bit of stress so people can see the problem and start to change. Waste is your enemy. Waste is always your enemy. So focus on the waste, people, not just on people. People are going to help you to get rid of waste. So stuff like lean applied to digital, and Kanban in certain way is a kind of a lean practice applied to a digital environment. So if we can combine lean with Kanban and with a few agile practices, you can help your team to get rid of waste and start to measure waste, how much waste we are providing to customers, right? I know it's something weird, but some companies provide waste to come to customers. So why are we doing that, and how we can remove that from them? Another thing that is quite useful is pursuing evolutionary change. Stop trying to change the world. Change one thing at a time. Okay, change as little as possible in an evolutionary approach and constant incremental approach. Okay, change the current environment, change the actual problem, but as little as possible so people won't resist that. Okay, resistance is futile in this in this context. If nobody understood this quote, go watch Star Trek. And last but not least, Kanban with, not Kanban instead. So try not to replace things with Kanban. Okay, this is not about replacement. This join forces. Okay, it's about collaboration. I told you guys a few slides before. Kanban is not about replacing what you have now. Start with what you do now and combine Kanban with your Scrum or with your Waterfall or with your Go Horse. But bring Kanban to the subject and not just try to replace your process. Okay. Well, very good. I think that's it. Any question?
Yes, thanks a lot for your presentation, Philippe. Yeah, I think we're ready to take some questions. So I'll just give people a couple of minutes to type in their thoughts and put them in the chat. If we just give people some time to have a think. In the meantime, I'm going to just briefly talk about EXIN Kanban. I'm going to put a link in the chat for you guys, but this link will be in the, we'll send, yeah, I think we've got a few questions about the slides and the recording. So all of the key information and resources will be shared with you after the webinar takes place. So there's no worries about that. But this link, so back in July now, we launched our own EXIN Kanban Foundation. And what we really like about this is it's foundation, but it's also practical. So it gives you a nice basic understanding of how you can actually, Philippe mentioned Kanban takes a long time and involves a lot of cultural change, which is a key challenge for many organizations. So that is covered. And we also recommend doing training with the certification because you can actually get a bit of hands-on experience with a Kanban dashboard like Kanbanize, which Philippe has used quite a lot. And then you can come out sort of not only certified, but also, ready to go, so to speak. But yes, do take a look at our website. And if you have any questions, let us know. And yeah, well, we hope you enjoyed this webinar. But firstly, let's go to the questions. So firstly, we have from Rita, we have, can we use, so you talked a little bit about lean, Philippe. I think this question just expands on a little bit. Can we use lean Six Sigma techniques in Kanban?
Oh yeah, it's part of Kanban to be combined with other practices. Kanban, it's not itself a complete approach. It is not. It wasn't made for that. Kanban is about causing, let's say, um, it's about showing where are your problems and to help you trying to solve them. But any kind of tool that you have to bring that to bring the problems up and to talk more about them, that's fine. If we talk about lean, for example, you can use stuff like A3 to talk about problems. I use Toyota Kata for my consultancy. So there's a customer that we are working right now. We are talking about a little bit more about Kanban there, but we started the work with Toyota Kata. Okay, so yeah, you can combine lean practices with Kanban as long as they are useful for the issue. Okay, as long as they don't provoke resistance, as long as they help you to find where the problem is and to experiment a little bit more and to work with other people. Okay.
Great. Yeah, that's a really good answer. Yeah. And then we go down the list. So nextly we have, in which types of business contexts have you applied Kanban? Can you tell us a bit more about your experience?
Sure. I've used Kanban in a few environments. A lot of them are related to software development, but I've used with marketing teams. So Sebastian, calm down, calm down. It's okay. So with marketing teams, it's very interesting to use with marketing teams because everything is about flow too. So we have information coming from customers and from other departments from the company, and you have information getting out of the flow to other people. Sebastian, you guys can hear me? Everything's okay?
Yeah, all good. Yeah.
No, no, just because I go to show me a notification here about network connection, but that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I've worked with SEO teams, right? For the ones that don't know, SEO stands for search optimization, search engine optimization. So I worked with in a specific team that would provide necessary information of SEO to a development team. So they had to work a little bit more with flow. So I started to present them a few techniques like static and limiting work in progress, and the work started to flow, simple like that. And I worked with a web analytics team, which is a marketing part that basically help companies to measure user and customer behavior in their website. So we started with a few practices about visualization and about WIP limits, and simply started to decrease the overload. So yeah, you can apply to marketing, you can apply to financial teams, tax teams. There's a very interesting case study from Kanbanize that implemented Kanban and Kanbanize in a tax team and a logistic team too, applying not just Kanban but Kanbanize as well. You can use for HR teams for hiring people. Okay, I've used Kanban for that, limiting work in progress in a recruitment team. So yeah, there are a few departments, there are a few segments they can use Kanban, not just for technology, not just for digital environments, right? Even though David Anderson created the Kanban, not well conceived. I think created is the best word, but Kanban was conceived to is mainly for knowledge work, but it can be applied for other parts of the world. Let's say.
Yeah, great. It's interesting to
Big
hear
answer.
has. Yeah. It's very broad, but that's one of its benefits, I think. So let me take a look. Let's move on to the next question. Hi, thanks for the nice introduction to Kanban metrics. You're most welcome. Could you be more specific about what actions a team/organization could take after they find out some of the metrics are not as good as expected?
Okay. Well, recently in a client, I've noticed a few things. Okay, I've opened their They had a dashboard with a few of the main metrics, so throughput and cycle time and flow efficiency and a few other things. And the product leader, it's kind of the product, the everything leader. He's the IT leader, he's a product leader, the design leader. But he showed me his dashboard, and I've noticed everything was kind of red, right? So, but even though I knew that was bad, I couldn't just go to the team and say, "Hey, you guys have a terrible efficiency. You have a terrible process. You have terrible policies, and et cetera, et cetera." So you can't do that, okay? You're attacking them, and it's not going to be. You won't have a good outcome. So my first approach was to understand their pain. I talked a little bit with them and try to understand what are your main pain points, what's going on with your team. And a lot of them told me that they lacked, they didn't have enough documentation, they didn't have enough processes to work with, so they were doing the best they could. So the first thing I did was to understand the, the status quo, and um, from that causing the stress. So they told me they didn't have documentation. I said, okay, that's a good starting point. So what do you guys need to do before having documentation? Well, we need time. We don't have enough time to work on that. So okay, the team, I don't know, it was a 16, 15 people team. So I told him, okay, so you have right now 30 items in progress in your board. How many items should be in progress so you can have more time to work on documentation? And they told me, well, if we had, I don't know, something like 13 or 15 items, it will be better. We would have time. So okay, so we decrease. You start to work on them, and when they are, you're gonna finish the work. And when you guys reach 13 items, you stop bringing items from the usual backlog and start to work on documentation. Okay, okay. So this was the main rule. They created the rule. I didn't tell them how to do it. I just provided a pain point. I just showed them a little bit of the way, so they just walk through it. So Sebastian, to summarize the answer, it's a more it's a smooth way to show them a little bit of the problem and to kind of trigger the need for change.
Yeah.
And from that,
Yeah.
you start to work. I don't know. I know it's slow. It's a little bit slow. I know that, but you can teach them. They can actually learn from that and start to trigger the change. So
Yeah.
that's about it.
Great. Yeah. All right. We have 2 minutes left, so let's see how many questions we can answer in that time.
Okay.
The next one is a comparison question. So I use Scrum methodology to manage my activities. How is Kanban different from Scrum?
That's a very big question, but I'll try to make it smaller. So basically, Scrum talks a lot about cycles, right? And structure. Scrum is a structured framework. It has roles, it has events, it has artifacts. Kanban doesn't have any of that. Okay, Kanban has principles and practices, and what you have right now, you can work with those practices and those principles. For example, Scrum has a daily meeting, right? Kanban also suggests, it's not a rule, but it suggests a few kind of meetings, but we're not talking about that. But okay, you have a daily meeting, right? Instead of answering those, I don't know, some people use them or some people don't, but a lot of companies use that same 3-question approach, right? What am I going to do today? What have I done? Blah, blah, blah. Instead of using those 3 questions, you start to understand how the work is going. Don't focus on the people. Start to ask people what they are doing. Start to ask the work, how much work is left. So we have 3 items in your board. Okay, what else can we do to make this work finish, to make this item finish? Okay, to close this item. And that's a more Kanban daily meeting. So it's not focused on the people, it's focused on the work. Okay. Another thing that you can do is to apply a throughput metric. So you can use the metric throughput for your planning, for a sprint planning. Instead of trying to estimate an item, you can say, well, we can deliver 2 items per week. So our sprint is a 2-week period. So, well, if we deliver 2 items per week, our sprint planning can focus on 4 items. So you can use your throughput to plan. Okay, so it's not about understanding the differences. It's more about how can we use Kanban practices and principles in our environment today? How can we bring WIP limits or making policies more explicit in our Scrum today? Definition of done is a policy. So how can we make it more explicit? So that's about it. It's not as much as difference because Scrum focus on cycles and Kanban focus on flow, but it's more about how can we use Kanban with Scrum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good answer. Yeah. All right, we're a little bit, well, 1 minute over time, so unfortunately I'm going to have to close things off there. Thank you all for your questions. We've actually got quite a long list, so apologies if we couldn't get to yours this time around, but yes, thank you so much. Firstly, thank you, Philippe, for your time today. It's a really nice and informative presentation.
Thank you. And thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the opportunity and for everyone's attention. I hope I made myself clear. Have you know? You probably noticed that I'm a little bit nervous, so my English starts to crumble.
That's all good.
But I think that's okay. So thank you again. If you guys want to get in contact, talk a little bit more about Kanban or metrics or anything related to that, here's my QR code. You can access my LinkedIn, my YouTube channel, my everything. I think even my WhatsApp, if any of you guys use WhatsApp, and we can connect. Thank you.
Perfect. Sounds good. And yes, thank you all for attending today. I hope you found this session informative. Keep it out in your inbox for the follow-up email with the recording and slides. And wherever you are this evening, morning, or afternoon, I wish you a pleasant rest of the day. Thanks a lot, everyone. Take care now.
Bye-bye.